Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to continue with the router table build and assemble the mast-r-lift Excel fence and mitre slide. Well, here we have the Master Fence 2 that I purchased to go with my Excel table. And it's a little confusing at this point in time as to how to actually install this. And as it turns out, the reason it's confusing is because of the way it is shipped. And the way it is shipped is with these black brackets here are mounted to the top of the fence, I guess just to keep it from banging around. First things first, you need to remove these brackets, and they're just held in at the back with a couple of bolts and nuts onto the T-track of our fence. And once you get those 3 bolts loosened at the back, the mounting bracket just slides out, and there is the mounting bracket for your fence. It would have been nice if they would have told us this in the assembly instructions, but if they did, I missed it. So anyway, moving right along. Well, you now want to bolt these together, and this will be the configuration of the one bracket that will go onto your fence, and that will coincide with, or will attach to rather, this other bracket that you just removed. So all you're going to do is take this bracket here and slide it over top of these nuts, lining it up evenly on both sides, and then we're going to tighten it down a little bit, and then we can screw it into our router table. Now, if you bought everything JessEm so that all the stars align, then you already have the holes to drill for this, or the holes drilled for you for this fence. If you have not purchased it all as a unit, well, then you got a little bit of drilling to do. Just be careful you don't drill through your table and cause a through hole. And once you have that one all taken care of and aligned, you can do the same for the bracket on the other side. Well, the next step, if you're going on to a JessEm table, is to use 4 of those Torx screws that they provide you with. Line them up with the holes underneath here and screw this bracket in place. And once you get that done, repeat the process on the other side. Well, now that you've got the rails mounted to the edge of your router tabletop, you need to level the rails with the top of the table. So they suggest that you use the fence, but I have a straight edge and that's what I prefer. So we're just going to lift up the router fence, and this is where the router track where the fence will ride in. Going to have it level with the top of the fence, and then we're just going to tighten the bolts one by one. So we'll tighten this first one, and then once we get this one tightened, then we will move on to the next one on the track. And then we'll move over, make sure that this is lined up and flush. And once again, just tighten up the bolt. And we'll carry on and do that with the last one. And once we're done that and we're sure that this is nice and level and flush with the top of our tabletop, then we're going to repeat the process on the opposite side of the router table. Well, our next step is to install our hold down knobs for our track. So all we're going to do is we're going to take our 3/4 inch hex nuts. We're going to slide them into the track that we just put in, and we're going to take our locking knobs, go down through our fence, lining up with that knob, or sorry, with that nut that we just put in the track, and rotating our knob clockwise, we can lock down our fence into the track. Now you want to repeat that for the opposite side. Well, it's now time to install our blade guard or our bit guard, and for that they provide a couple of threaded jig knobs here and some square nuts for the T-track, and we're just going to install them lightly here or loosely, put them in our T-track, and then from there we can just bring it over to where we need it and tighten it down. Just like that. Nothing fancy, pretty simple design, and that there is pretty much our fence done. Well, if you're going to go big, you might as well go big. And that's what I've done here, as not only have I purchased the router table and the fence, but I've also purchased their miter slide. So that's what we're going to assemble next. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with our actual miter gauge. And the first thing to do is take this aluminum knurled knob here, and they give you this 1-inch washer. You're just going to put it in place, and first things first, put the knob in for your miter fence. Well, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our miter bar or the installation bar here, and we're going to place it on this front edge just underneath. The holes line up here in the front, and we have these other turned knurled knobs, and they will just get threaded into the 1/4-20 thread that's down below. Now, I wouldn't crank this on just yet because there's more to do. So just a loose fit for now is perfect. Well, now that you have your mounting bar attached, you want to attach it to your fence. And there is a milled slot here in the aluminum extrusion, and you just want to slide that bar in. There's actually a rib here at the back that will help you align it. And it just slides in, and then you can tighten down those knobs that you installed, and that is your fence now put into place. Well, we now have this entire sliding assembly, and this will now get attached to our miter fence. So all you need to do is line these brackets here up. You've got a 1/4-20 by 1-inch cap screw, and you'll line it up with the holes. One goes in the top there like that. The other one goes in the top on the other bracket, just like this. And then once you get those in place, you want to use a 1/4-inch flat washer, and they will get inserted in the front holes here. I know it's difficult to see because of that handle is right in our way, but they will get inserted into, there we go, right into that front hole there, just like that. And then there is a second one on the other bracket. Now this is a little awkward, and so again, if you can get someone to help you with this, that would be the ideal situation. I'm kind of struggling here trying to hold it and bolt it and that sort of thing. So if you can get a helper, get one. So we now need to attach the mounting bars to each one of these flanges here. You've got the one way down there at that end, and you've got this one up here. And we just need one of the 1/4 by 1¼ cap screws and a 1/4" flat washer. And we're just going to finger tight put these loosely on here, and these will slide into our fence rails or our fence brackets eventually. So we've got one on this side, and now we need to do the same on the opposite side. Well, we need to mount the mounting brackets onto the fence. And these are the brackets that are going to house our entire miter slide assembly. So we need to put a couple of 1/4 or square nuts here into the lower assembly of our track, just like that. And we're going to use some 1 inch long 1/4 bolts. And this is all temporary right now. I'm just kind of piecing this together. And we're going to use our bolts and a flat washer. And we're just going to loosely put this in place. Just like this. Now this large bracket is going to end up being on, looking from the back, on the left-hand side of our assembly. So for the bracket in the right side of our fence, or that's looking from the back, I've actually found it easier here to put the screws in first, line them up with your tracks, and then slide them in. It was giving me a hard time because the tracks are rather deep and the nuts were going right to the back and causing me a few problems as far as alignment goes and that sort of thing. But that's okay. Live and learn. There we go. There's our second one. And we'll just finger tight that in place. And now we can mount our whole assembly to those brackets. Well, now that we have those brackets loosely in place, we're going to undo these cap screws that we placed here earlier, which held our mounting brackets, and we are going to place them down through the slotted holes that are in the mounting brackets that we just assembled, and we can screw this down into place, and that will firmly hold this where it needs to be. Now that we have that roughly where we want it, now we can travel to the other side over there, and we can attach this side as well. Same process. We'll loosen these cap screws so that that bottom plate comes off. We're going to slide our bracket across, lay this down on here so that we can get our plate in place and screw it finger tight down where it needs to be. Well, it's time now to make some adjustments, and for this bracket here, which is the larger of the two mounting brackets, this end needs to be 3.5 inches from the edge of the fence. Now, as far as it running parallel to the fence, you can pretty much sight it right down the line there, and you should be able to see whether or not it is actually parallel. Another way to do it, of course, is to place your fence tight up against your regular fence and just let it run along and while it's loose, and then tighten it up once it's finally adjusted. Now this black bracket here, which is the miter bracket, this should be running against the fence, and you can see down in here that I've got a bit of a gap. So we're gonna have to address that. And the way that we're going to do that is we need to loosen off our mounting brackets here on the top, and that has to slide back towards the fence. Now I will just point out, your fence of your miter sled or your miter slide, the fence does not ride against the fence of the router table, but the mounting bracket certainly has to. So we're just going to slide it back, and now we can see how that is now riding nicely against the fence, and we have it there nice and pretty like that. And once we get it nice and pretty, just give it a little bit of a tighten. And that will now, of course, allow the bracket to ride nicely on our fence of our router table. Just like that. And we'll check it at both ends, of course, to make sure that it actually is nice and parallel and that everything is set up. Well, there are a couple more adjustments to do, and then we can call this one pretty much finished. But do all the check, make sure that it's parallel, etc., etc. And then once you get all that tightened down, come back and see me. Well, there are several adjustments to be made on the miter fence itself, and those include things like squareness to the table and squareness to the fence of the router. And honestly, it's a little more than I'm willing to get into to explain, but in a nutshell, in order to adjust the squareness of this fence to the table of the router, it is done with a series of bolts here and set screws and tightening and loosening to tilt that table up or down in order to get the squareness. As far as the squareness to the table goes, if it is not square, you just need to remove this nut right here, at which point, once you have it loose, you can then place this down, set it up with a square. You can see here there's a bit of a play now where you can adjust this. Adjust it as square. Once you get it set to square and you're happy with it, then you can tighten that 3/4 nut right back down, and Bob is your uncle. So just like that, we are square. We will carefully slide this back, get a wrench on there, and torque this down so that it's not going to move on us. Just like that. And then we'll place it back down and check for square again. And we are right on the money. So this whole assembly now slides rather well. It's all adjusted. This is parallel now to our fence. Mostly sighted it up and then then adjust it according to how the bracket rides on the fence. Not really rocket science as far as setting up the miter slide goes, but honestly, quite a slick little system. And there you have it. The JessEm mast-r-lift 2 system with the miter slide. Guys, I don't know what to tell you about this, as this video was really only about the assembly of the whole thing. There isn't many videos out there on the assembly, and the ones that I found were not very, well, they weren't very good instructions. There's a lot of confusion in the manuals as far as putting this thing together, and the reason for that is it's kind of modular, whereas you don't necessarily have to have the whole system. And the whole system is also designed to work with different fences and different router tables and different tops, etc., etc., etc. So there's a lot of cross-referencing and a lot of messing around with that kind of stuff. Truth be told, to assemble this entire thing and get it calibrated, it took me about a 7-hour day. Now, you have to remember I'm filming as well, which is a big distraction and takes up a ton of time. But if you are going to get yourself something like this and you are going to assemble it, give yourself a day. You really need a good day to put it all together. So far, I like it. I like the solid feeling of it. I like the smooth action of the lift. I like the smooth action of the mitre slide. All in all, so far, I'm impressed, but taking it out of the box and assembling it is one thing, and actually using it in a shop is another. So I'm going to give it a few months down the road before I open my mouth about what I actually think of the whole system. Guys, this video has been a horrific experience to film. I always say the project has been fun. I don't like putting tools together. I'm not a fan. I'm a tool user, not a tool assembler. So putting it together is a pain in the neck, and I'm not too happy about losing a day of work in the shop, but what I got out of it is a router table that I'm hoping I'm going to really enjoy and get a ton of use out of. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in again this week. Don't forget to click that bell to get the notifications of future shows. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, please. And I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.